Okay. Another one here talks about the word abomination. A friend of mine feels that even though eating shellfish is an abomination, as it says in Leviticus 11:10, it is a less abomination than homosexuality. I don't agree. So can you settle this? That indeed the Torah uses the word abomination, toyeva, to describe eating shellfish, prawns, lobster, and it uses the same word toyeva to describe homosexuality. So what the author here, Jim, is I guess making fun of is that so homosexuality is an abomination and eating shellfish is an abomination. Like, what's the story here? Like, what's so abominable about eating shellfish? Some would say that's a delicacy. People pay a lot of money to eat a lobster, and that's called an abomination. And so we see that
even the comparison from eating shellfish to
what the Bible calls an abomination is so ridiculous. You know, maybe once upon a time eating shellfish was an abomination because they didn't have good refrigeration and hygiene, and so maybe it was an abomination once. But like now, who would say it's an abomination? It's a very sophisticated thing to do, to eat lobster and prawns, and so too homosexuality is called an abomination. Okay, maybe in biblical times that's how it was looked upon, but today it's not like that at all. So to broaden this question, the truth is that there are many, many things that the Torah calls an abomination. And when we look through what they are, it's quite surprising. People often quote the idea that homosexuality is called an abomination. And the word abomination in English, we don't use it all that often. What is an abomination? It means something that is disgusting, something that is sickening, it's revolting, nauseating, an affront to humanity to be such a thing. It's like something that you're turned off by. That's what an abomination means. And so people often throw around that the Torah calls homosexuality an abomination. That's how bad it is. It's so disgusting. And the attitude to homosexuality should be that it makes us sick. We're revolted by the concept. But if you look at the list of things that the Torah calls a toyeva, which is translated as abomination, so some of them don't seem all that disgusting. Even if you say shellfish, maybe in times when they didn't eat it was looked at as disgusting. But let's have a look at some of the other things that are called abomination. A man wearing a woman's clothes all the other way around is also called a toyeva. All sexual immorality, which includes things like incest, but also includes things like adultery, is called an abomination, toyeva. Even relations with a niddah, with a menstruating woman, is also called a toyeva, an abomination. Someone who uses incorrect weights and measures in their store. So they're selling things by weight, but they cheat. And they shave off a bit off the weight, so they're selling less. That's called a toyeva. It's also called an abomination. Sacrificing an animal with a blemish on it. If you bring a sacrifice of an animal and that animal has a cut in it or some imperfection, it's called a toyeva. So these things, like, are they disgusting, nauseating? Is it nauseating for someone to bring a sacrifice that has a cut in the ear, or is it disgusting for somebody to use an incorrect weight? Like, does that make you sick? Such a thing? It seems like it's a much broader concept than that. Adultery, is adultery nauseating? Is it subhuman, or is it very natural, very human, very very normal? Just wrong. Just prohibited. So these things, some of these things are logical laws, some of them are quite illogical laws, but there's quite a broad range of things. So to say that the Torah has specifically hones in on homosexuality as being a particularly horrible, disgusting thing, because it calls it a toyeva, well, all these things are also a toyeva. So as disgusted as a person would be about homosexuality, they should be equally disgusted about eating shellfish. In fact, all non-kosher food is called a toyeva. All the non-kosher species are called a toyeva. So pig is also called a toyeva. It's also called disgusting. So what is this toyeva? Does it really mean disgusting? Well, a telling insight on it is the most common thing that is called a toyeva is idolatry. There are 9 times in the Torah that idolatry is called a toyeva. And it could even be that all these other things were all idolatrous practices. They were all the practices of the idolatrous nations. Homosexuality was extremely common in the ancient world. The act of homosexuality. Not the identity of a homosexual, but the act of doing homosexual acts was very common in the ancient world, and it wasn't forbidden.
Jewish people?
Anyone, it was just a common thing. It was, if you study the history of it, it's very interesting.
Apparently Pharaoh had a lot of boys in his harem.
Yeah, I was watching this
So did
show.
Julius Caesar.
Yes.
So did the kamikaze warriors.
Spartacus.
And
Spartans and all that.
Yeah,
you know,
the
they
Spartans.
used to stay together.
Yep. It was not considered an identity. It wasn't that a person was gay or straight. It was that there's different ways of expressing your sexuality, this way, that way, and the same person could go either way. It was just a taiva. It was just a desire, an expression of desire.
It seems like people didn't really care less as well, neither. You know, it was
Correct.
just something normal.
Correct. Something completely normal.
Yeah.
It was the Torah that came along and prohibited homosexuality and said that it's a forbidden relationship. It's not a forbidden lifestyle identity, it's a forbidden thing to do.
Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
So it is prohibited, just like eating pig is prohibited by the Torah. Everyone did it. It was a normal thing to eat pig, and the Torah said not to. And pig was something that idolaters used particularly. So to milk and meat, and so to many other things that was a common idolatrous practice. The Torah forbade it. Not because it's innately disgusting, but because it's forbidden, it's prohibited. It's something that the Torah doesn't want. For whatever reason.
Is everything the Torah forbids an abomination?
No. There are only certain things mentioned as an abomination. Idolatry is also called an abomination. Everyone did it. It wasn't a nauseating thing. It wasn't something that is naturally nauseating or sick. No, on the contrary. It was something that was very common. But the Torah prohibited it and called it a toyeva. So what does the word toyeva mean? Why describe something as completely as a toyeva? The most interesting time that the use of the word toyeva comes in the Torah is the first time. And generally speaking, also any word in Torah, the first time it comes is a defining factor. What was the first thing called a toyeva? Jews. That the first time the word toyeva was used was in reference to Jews. It was when Yosef and his brothers were in Egypt, and he had a meal with them separately from the Egyptians, because it was a toyeva for Egyptians to eat with a Hebrew, so therefore they ate separately. The Egyptians saw the Hebrews as being a toyeva, to eat together with them, partially because they would eat the sheep, the food of sheep, which the Egyptians worshipped, and so therefore it was considered toyeva to eat together with an Israelite, with a Hebrew. So what does toyeva mean? It means something that is not for you. Something that is not for you. Others do it, others have it, but it's something that we don't do. That it might exist, it might happen, but it's something you have to distance. You have to push away. There's no implication of toyeva as being something that is naturally disgusting, that you innately are put off by it. It's that this is something that the Torah has come and prohibited, even though maybe there is justification for it. Maybe others can justify why there's nothing wrong with it. Nevertheless, the Torah has prohibited it. In fact, the Gemara says that the word toyeva is actually a combination of three words. Toya ataba. Toya ataba means you're mistaken in this. It's a mistake. It's wrong because it's a mistake. Toyeva comes from toya, toos, which means a mistake. Meaning that others have explained why there's nothing wrong with it. It's a mistake. The Torah has prohibited it. There may be justification for it. You may think it's a wonderful thing to do, but the Torah has prohibited it. That's what makes it a toyeva. And so therefore our translation of toyeva is not abomination in the sense of something that is off-putting or disgusting or worse than other sins. On the contrary, it's that this is something that is very common, very often done, and seen as acceptable in other societies, but not in ours. We have a prohibition simply because the Torah said it. And so therefore, shellfish, homosexuality, cross-dressing, or bringing a sacrifice that has a blemish on it, all these things, there are people who say, there's nothing wrong with it, it's absolutely normal. And maybe they have their arguments, but our Torah prohibits it, and that's why it's prohibited. And therefore, the correct attitude to somebody who does a toyeva is that we don't agree with that because it's prohibited by the Torah, not because it's sick, because it's prohibited by the Torah. And so just like if somebody who is a self-confessed lobster consumer They eat lobster and they like it. And they want to know, can I come to shul? Can I be a part of the community? I eat lobster. What would we say to that person?
Yes.
Would we say, I'm sorry, I can't look you in the face. I can't smell your breath. I can't be in the same presence as a person who eats lobster. Of course not. We'd say you're more than welcome to come. We're not saying you can eat lobster. It's prohibited by the Torah. We're not justifying that. And if you want to come to our shul, you can't bring your lobster with you and eat it in shul. If you want to sponsor a kiddush, it's not going to have lobster. It's not a part of what happens. But if you want to be part of the community, absolutely, why not? The fact that one thing you do is a toyeva, it means it's something that people do and we prohibit. But that doesn't disqualify you as a person or make you any less or make you off-putting or disgusting to me. So too with any other toyeva that the Torah describes, it's a toyeva. We're not supposed to do it, but it doesn't make you disgusting.
Sorry.